Hi everyone, this is Ali John Chaudhary, psychotherapist, and today I'm here with Fern Schumer Chapman, author. And today we have a very important episode because today we're going to be talking about how to eulogize someone who is estranged. And being able to talk about a family member who we're not close to can be daunting, right? What with the lack of significant memories together, we may wonder just what it is that we can say about someone who's largely become a stranger to us, or even feel ashamed or embarrassed in not knowing much about them as well. So, in this episode, we'll look at ways to discuss an estranged person and how we can facilitate the process of eulogizing someone we know little about because of estrangement. So, Fern, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And I understand that you have a story you wanted to share with us.
Well, when I was reading your notes about this, I was thinking about my grandmother, who at the age of 88 passed away and no longer belonged to a synagogue. And so there was no rabbi who knew her intimately and could praise her for her compassion and nurturance and all of the lovely qualities she had. And so the rabbi got up there after speaking with many family members and put together something which did not sound like her. It was hollow. And it made me think about all this because, in some ways, that's what the estranged are forced to do. They have to eulogize somebody who they know actually quite well, but they don't have a lot of positive things to say about them. So your challenge is to find something to say about someone you know too well.
That's a good story, actually. And you're absolutely right. I think that that's the challenge that a number of us have to deal with, right? Because what is it that we can say, right? Because it can be seen to be in bad taste when we criticize a dead relative. And really, what's important here for us is that there are ways for us to work around this when it comes to an estranged relationship. So there are certain things that we can do that can help us to eulogize them. And I think that one of the mistakes that people make is that they think that they need to have a particular recent memory about them. And I think that that's the challenge, right? Because what do you do if you don't have any recent memories with them, right? And I think that there are many ways that we can talk about a deceased, estranged sibling. And there are a few ways that I'd like to get us uh, to go through just so we can help some of our viewers.
Well, what comes to my mind is keep your sense of humor because you can always take something unpleasant and step back and laugh about it, and that will help as you think about how to eulogize someone who you have bad feelings about.
Absolutely. I think that humor can sometimes be well placed when it comes to that, and that can help to keep things light. In fact, that's one of the healthy defense mechanisms that people have actually when it comes to dealing with certain hardships and difficulties. So, definitely a good thing that we can use, especially. What I like to remind people is the idea that they can share with regards to past memory when people were younger as well, right? We don't need to necessarily dwell on a recent memory or even on an adult memory. You can even talk about things that can be associated to when you were a child. I remember when I was a child, we would go to such and such place with them, for example. You can say that,
Right.
or we would always have fun when we engaged in this activity, for example. So there are things that you can say that can bring about certain knowledge of that person, especially in a eulogy context like this.
Yeah, and it's all in the language and tone of what you say. So, in other words, you don't want to sound judgmental. You want to remember with fondness, even though you might not feel fond about that particular person.
Exactly, right? And you're free to talk about the emotion behind what you experienced, or even the emotion that showed on their face, which
Mhm.
you remember and you may carry also. So a lot of times people say that they went from a good relationship with their sibling to a bad relationship.
Mhm.
So that part that was still good at the time that you had that can still be a point of reference when you have to eulogize somebody.
Yeah. I think too, what I didn't get to say at the beginning of this, which I would have liked to have said, is that you can keep this really short. You don't have to go on and on. So that also contains the content,
Hmm. Exactly, right? Less is more sometimes.
especially when you don't have a lot of good things to say.
That's right, exactly. And I find that sometimes when we're not sure what to say, it's good to speak about some of their qualities, right? If you don't really have any memories that you have of them, you can talk about their character or the qualities you may have detected in them that you thought they had. And sometimes an example of what that can look like is I always admired their tenacity and faithfulness towards realizing their goals, right? Or they taught me the importance of asserting myself and making my needs known, which are some things that people sometimes have to deal with, I think, in the sibling estrangement community. Or you could even say something along the lines of, he was very success oriented. Because of this, he showed me how important it is to keep holding on to my dreams, right?
So what you're saying is these are code words. Those who are grieving knew this person. They will read into it exactly what they knew of that person as well. And again, doesn't have to be judgmental. It's just calling attention to his drive, which meant that he wasn't a family man and didn't have time for siblings or his children or whoever else. But you can say this in code.
Right? Exactly. And that's really, really important that you can be able to share that, right? Just enough that people can add to that towards what they knew of that particular person as well, right? So,
Right, which is why you want to be mindful of who's in the audience. So, because they're grieving. And so it's not just what you're going to say about this person, it's how it's going to land for those who are hurting.
right? Exactly. And that's really, really important to be mindful of that and such. And another way of dealing with it and being able to eulogize is to speak of a character flaw that can be made into a virtue for you, right? So I'll look into some of these examples here, and that can have to do with a large way, spin it in such a way that you're bringing out the skills you had to adapt towards them. And what I mean by that is, let's just take some examples here, okay? When a sibling would make little to no room for you, something you could say, for example, is George was known to have a strong personality, as some of you know, and he taught me how to be patient and develop my own personality. Right?
Mm. Yeah, that's a perfect way to do it. There's another way to handle this. And that is what that rabbi did that I told you about in the beginning, and talk to a lot of other people and find out what their experiences were and find out anecdotes about the the deceased through them and see if there's any way to reveal character and eulogize through those stories.
Absolutely, yes. And that's certainly something to be done that can help us. And it helps us also in our own grieving process as well to do that, actually. Another example of what people can say also is when a sibling would exaggerate or distort details about you, you could say something along the lines of, Denise had a creative imagination and showed a quirky interest in me. And she taught me to turn further inwards and develop my own creative pursuit, right?
So quirky that she had nothing to do with me.
Right? Exactly. So that you can say it in such ways where you can spin it in a different direction that still honors your truth as an individual, but yet also allows other people to think fondly of that person. And even in some very dramatic instances when a sibling is unpredictable and subject to outbursts, Brenda had a colorful personality. She would sometimes show me all these colors, whether I wanted to see them or not.
Yeah,
And
and there's the humor, and that's exactly right. I mean, all of these examples are going back to what we talked about in the beginning, which is how you say it.
yeah, exactly. So that really matters in terms of how you present that and such. And keeping in mind that it's truthful what you're saying. You're not fabricating anything. You are just presenting it in such a way that is honoring you and honoring the deceased person as well. And another thing you can do also is if all else fails, talk about how they lived their life, right? In some ways, that's important as well. based on their actions. What is it that they did? An
Mhm.
example of that could be Dwight decided that living alone was best for him. So he did what a lot of us wished we could sometimes do, right?
Yeah, and I think if you really can't find pleasant or comforting things to say, you can do some sort of reflection on loss
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
general way.
Exactly, yes. And that's really important because a lot of these statements do open us up on what loss can be and what we can learn from it. Another example of something we could say about somebody is Mary was a skilled academic. She taught us the importance of remaining a lifelong learner. So, again, you are talking favorably about somebody that is deceased and based on their actions, how they live their
Yeah,
lives.
I think what you're saying is to look at what they modeled.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's really important, right? So that other people can feel that they can get to know them or acknowledge what they know about them, as you said earlier, right? And I think another example could also be with somebody in particular that has challenges like, say, mental health issues and such. A good thing to say would be Doug was the most persevering of all of us. He
Mm,
taught us not to take for granted what most of us have, right?
mm.
And there is a takeaway from that. There is a lesson that's conveyed with that. And that helps us in turn to reflect about our own grief, which is really about what the eulogy should be about.
Yeah. What can we take away from the life that has passed?
Yeah, really, really important. So I hope that today's episode was helpful for our viewers in terms of helping them to get unstuck when it comes to perhaps knowing what to say, knowing how to say it, in which context, and what can be brought up, especially that can be helpful, so that way other people can get to know that sibling, even if they've been estranged from you and such. So, Fern, we're almost out of time. Let's talk about resources. What would be your number one resource at this time?
Well, I think related to this, the blank page can be very intimidating because we don't know what to say. And I've written, obviously, the journal for sibling estrangement, and I think that can help you sort out ideas that you might use in your eulogy.
Absolutely. And that's a great resource. Thank you for sharing that, for sure. My number one resource is the Sibling Estrangement Support Group on Zoom. I have this every couple of weeks, and it's a very empowering place. It's a place that helps people to be uplifted. I host these groups myself, and they're 2 hours in length, and it's very important for people to feel that they can be less alone with their experience, especially when they meet other people of like mind. And I'm going to be releasing this resource on rumination. And it's very important that if people want to get in touch with me, that they want to participate with me, this is going to be done in a group setting that will be one-on-one with me. And this is going to be a cutting edge approach in terms of dealing with rumination. So I hope that some of you that are interested in this can contact me and join me on this. And I very much look forward to sharing this resource with the community and such. So, Fern, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm very happy that we had a chance to talk about this subject matter that both of us hold dear. And I think that a lot of people in our community, of course, hold dear as well.
Right. Great to be with you.
All right, you take care, Fern.
Thanks.
Thanks.